My name is Lauren Rethray, and I am joining you from my home in Nelson, BC. I'm the coordinator of the Columbia Basin Rural Development Institute at Selkirk College, which in partnership with the Adapting to Climate Change team at Simon Fraser University and the Planning Institute of BC, is the organization that is convening the Bridging Silos event. We are in for what promises to be a very fascinating 2 days of virtual sessions and networking, and we're very excited to have you join us. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which Selkirk College operates is within the traditional territories of the Snipes Lakes, the Syilx, Okanagan, the Chenowha, and the Secwepemc Shuswap people. I also invite you to personally take note of and acknowledge the traditional territories that you are joining us from. At this time, I'd like to welcome Métis Elder Donna Wright to open our event. Donna has been a committed member of the Nelson area for over 30 years, working with and supporting families. She has a deep relationship with Selkirk College and is part of the Elder program. And after learning of our event and our ask for an elder to open it, Donna very graciously offered to speak about relationships with the land, animals, and each other. So thank you, Donna, and over to you.
Thank you so much. And good morning to everyone. And my goodness, this is such a deep honor that it fell onto me to try to put all our hearts in the same place at this time, opening this work that people are doing. And what I would like to do first is to let you know that I am Métis. I come from Saskatchewan. My ancestry comes from Saskatchewan, from road allowance. But on my mother's side, I have Norwegian. I like to always let people know that I believe in everybody's right to introduce themselves how they want and to choose how to identify themselves. Also, I believe everybody has their own belief system, and I don't want to interfere in any of that. And I don't belong to any organized faith, but I have some very strong commitment to teachings I have picked up along the way because I lost so much. I didn't know anything, and my parents died early and I was disconnected from everything. So it's been a journey to take on what I feel works right for me in my heart. So what I will start with is that I believe with all my heart that everybody from the moment that they are born and they take in that first breath that they belong to this earth and universe. And that with that breath comes a very special gift that belongs just to them. And we know this is true because we all have our own fingerprints, eye prints, and so many things about us that are just uniquely ours. So I like to begin with that. And what I say when I mean that we also belong to the 6 nations of the earth. We belong to the crawlers and the flyers and the swimmers and the plants and the 2-legged and the 4-legged. And we know that we would not be here if it was not for the other nations that helped us to survive and remain here today. And I know that when I think from this perspective, then I know that we are all brothers and sisters and we need to take care of each other in the best way that we can because we are interdependent. I also like to acknowledge the stages of life, the different ages and stages we go through, because as a baby, we believe that children remind us of what we've forgotten. And one little example of that I would have was when I asked one time with a group of little kids what sacred meant. One little guy told me it meant something that's special to you and you want to take care of. And that is certainly how I feel about the hearts of all of the people around me and the heartbeat of the land. So I also like to, when you move from that stage into your youth stage, we all know that as soon as you become that stage, you kind of forget everything and have to start all over again. And, you know, that's where the adults and the elders come in to help guide that process. So it's a journey in life that is very, very special. And I know that for me, getting to be a part of these kinds of things that continue to work toward the well-being of our heartbeat and the heartbeat of our land is so special. And when I think of those things, then I know that I am so fortunate to have lived long enough to be a witness. And that's the last thing I would like to finish with. The greatest gift that I can give to anybody right now is to witness and acknowledge the things that they have done. And the more opportunity I get to do that, it's a funny thing, but the better I feel. I am deeply humbled to be here today. I have great honor for the college. I have great honor for all of the people that work for the college and all the people that are in this line of work, trying a little bit at a time to make this a better and safer place for our future generations. Thank you so much for allowing me to open this.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna, for that wonderful opening, which I think really grounds us for a productive and exciting couple of days during which we'll speak often about our relationships with each other, with our heartbeat, and with the environment. So we have a little gift for you, which will be waiting for you next time you visit the Castlegar campus.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we are gathered, we are situated, and we'd like to take just a couple minutes to talk to you about our plans for the next couple of days before we hand it over to our opening panel. I'm sure everyone in this virtual room can agree climate change is a defining issue of our time. An inclusive, innovative, and impactful climate action is a top priority in small communities and rural regions where we are uniquely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Big problems require big ideas, and those are most likely to happen when we put our heads together. So in that respect, collaboration on climate challenges is no longer an option, it's an imperative. This event has been planned with that imperative in mind, and we have three big goals. Those are that you'll be able to strengthen adaptation-focused relationships within and beyond your communities, that you'll be able to learn from each other, and that you will learn together from leading experts in the fields of climate adaptation and low carbon resilience. This event is being delivered as part of the Rural Development Institute's Rural Climate Innovations Project, which brings together 9 local governments to build regional capacity for climate adaptation. Many of our partner governments are represented at this conference and will be involved in delivery of some of your sessions. So the plans for this event have really evolved over the past several months. What was originally envisioned as a one-day in-person event targeted primarily at local government folks from within our region has morphed into a 2-day fully online event that has the ambitious goal of convening all sorts of people from all sorts of sectors from all across Western Canada. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the conference organizing team for their bold vision and skillful execution, especially Jamie Jones and Ingrid Liepa. If you meet someone interesting or learn something new over the next few days, please be sure to thank Jamie and Ingrid. We have 2 convening partners who we are delighted to be joining on this journey. Those are the Adapting to Climate Change team at Simon Fraser University and the Planning Institute of British Columbia Kootenay Rockies chapter. I'd like to extend a special welcome to the folks that are joining from those networks. And finally, this event was made possible with funding from the Municipalities for Climate Innovation program, which is delivered through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and funded by the Government of Canada. I know some FCM folks are with us today, so thank you, FCM, for the good work you're enabling in our region and across Canada. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Terry McDonald for a welcome on behalf of Selkirk College. Terry is the Director of Applied Research and Innovation at Selkirk. Over to you, Terry.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm joining you from beautiful Winlaw, British Columbia in my home, and I'm hoping my internet will participate with me for a welcome. I'm incredibly honored to join you today and to welcome you to this absolutely amazing event. I want to start by offering a huge congratulations to the planning team, to the student interns who are helping throughout the conference today, and for your bold vision, bridging silos. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I realized this morning when I was reflecting just about this conference and the journey that I've had at Selkirk College when I joined back in 2011, so delighted to see Angus here, because it was 10 years ago, Angus, that we launched the Rural Development Institute. That's 10 years. I cannot believe it's actually 10 years. And what a great conference to be reflecting at, because I remember those early days and Angus's vision about building capacity for the region to do for the region, and the concept of the learning region and collaborative learning. And that vision was there from the very beginning, and we're seeing it it's stronger today than I think it's ever been. And I think Lauren had mentioned, you know, we've got some big challenges in front of us. Climate adaptation is a complex, wicked challenge, just like transportation, poverty, housing, coming out of a pandemic. These are all huge, huge challenges that we have to rely on one another in order to tackle. I think about the work that Selkirk and others are doing around equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it's all connected. If we don't have those diverse voices at the table, and we're not including those diverse voices, we're not going to be able to address these challenges. But together, I truly believe we can and we will. We are an innovative region. We have been for as long as I can remember. We can get it done, and we will get it done. So it's just absolutely delightful just to sort of full circle 10 years later, here we are, absolutely stronger than ever. And then of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about our strategic plan, our commitments, specifically related to environmental sustainability, innovation, diversity, and inclusion. And then when you dig into the strategic directions and the strategic priorities, you'll see community development, you'll see collaboration, you'll see excellence in learning, and you'll also see climate change mitigation specifically mentioned in Selkirk College's plan. So why are we here? Why is Selkirk College here? Well, it's our honor to convene. It's our honor to convene partners from within the region and bringing in partners from outside the region to help create an environment where we can brainstorm over the next few days, and I hope beyond, breaking down these silos, bridging these silos, and planning for the future. So this is not a start or an end, it's part of the journey, and I very much look forward to continuing it with you, and I wish you all the best, and huge congratulations to everyone for putting such a wonderful event together. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Terry. I'm just so grateful for each of you, all the attendees and the speakers. Altogether, we have over 200 attendees registered who will be participating in the various parts of our event, and over 50 speakers and 19 sessions. So there's lots to take over this. So my name is Jamie Jones, and I'm a researcher with the Columbia Basin Rural Development Institute at Selkirk College, and one of the main conveners for this event. So thank you for participating in our vision. So as Lauren mentioned, one of the key goals is really about building relationships, and that's where we really are excited about this virtual event platform, because it allows us the opportunity to help build the foundations of the bridge that we can then connect and bridge our silos, and that's through the networking pieces within the event. So I'm just going to go over quickly a few logistical pieces to help enhance your experience in this virtual event. So I do encourage you to play around within the virtual event platform. The networking feature within the tab, has some really powerful options to make it feel like the in-person event. That's where you can actually connect one-on-one with the various attendees. So if you heard something interesting, or you wanted to connect with someone who maybe made a comment in a session, you just simply go to the networking tab, find the person, and you can start a one-to-one conversation with them. We'll also be hosting 3 open space sessions. This is where you as attendees get to convene the conversations or participate in conversations that are important to you. And even if you don't have a specific topic in mind, you can gather around a group of peers, or maybe a group of folks from a specific geographic region that want to just have a conversation together. This is your time to use that space and use those features. So I encourage you to explore within that. And part of the virtual event platform is being able to see each other within the platform. So if you haven't already done so, highly encourage you to select the account tab. And within there, you can upload a photo and a little bit of information about yourself. If you don't have a photo, that's okay. Share some information so that we can kind of follow each other around and connect within the platform. Also within the platform is the option for notifications. We highly encourage you to enable all notifications. That's how we'll be connecting with you over the next couple days to share important information. We will be using it post event, so it's just kind of during the event. So we encourage you to make those settings. Also, as you noticed when you started this session, we will be recording all sessions. This is so that we can upload to the event platform when the virtual event is done. And that way, if you weren't able to attend one concurrent session because you were in another one, you can then watch the session after the fact, so that we can keep sharing the information even if you weren't attending live in a session. We do have a really excellent and exciting little, we're calling it the Bridging Silos Virtual Lounge. This is at 4:30 Pacific time tonight. And it's going to be a fun way for us to get that in-person feel, the mix and mingle with your peers and your colleagues, new and old. So we do encourage you to participate in that. It's short and it's really fun, and you can bring your snacks and a drink to that. Yeah, so we invite you to that. As we know, with how we've all had to pivot to the online platforms, virtual conferences are new, and it's innovative. We're really excited to bring this to you, and we've done lots of planning and prep. We do want to acknowledge that some glitches may happen. If that does, we will work through it and we'll support each other. And so we just thank you for your patience if you run into some of those, and where the team will work through it and support you. If there's any questions at all throughout your experience, please private chat me, Jamie Jones, and I will either help you or get someone on our planning team to help you through any challenges or questions that might arise. And that's kind of it for the logistics. And I'm very happy now to lead us into our plenary, Bridging Silos, 4 Perspectives from the Field. And so to lead this off, I'd like to introduce our President and CEO of Selkirk College and the moderator for the keynote, Angus Graham. Over to you.
Wow, thank you. And just listening to you talk, Jamie, it must have been quite an organizational job for you and the team. So really thank you for all the work you've done. You'd think it would be easier because we're all kind of remote, but it doesn't sound to me like it was easier than organizing an in-person event. But good morning, everyone. Why hassle hout, hasselikakwast, kisu kukit, kisu klitnam, waked, tanse, and good morning. And thank you so much for the first speakers, and Donna Marseille, Donna, for the opening that, as Lauren said, grounded us in why we're here and why we need to have a couple of days of great discussion and learning from one another, because we're so tied to each other, but also tied to the land so closely, and in particular on these traditional territories and in rural and remote communities. And so just really appreciate those opening remarks. And Terry, 10 years, I didn't realize that it's 10 years this, and where did that go? But where's the last year gone too? It's amazing to think that we've been interacting in this way for almost a year now. So, and it's great to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But what an honor to be asked to join you this morning, and to see that we're now up to, I think, over 90, almost 100 people joining us this morning for this morning's plenary, which is going to be awesome. It seems that we're still very close to each other, which is great. It's just great to see some of the names coming on who we know here at the college and then throughout the region. Last night I was trying to find a quote from the late novelist Norman Maclean, who wrote The River Runs Through It. So I'm gonna have to, I couldn't find it. I'm gonna have to paraphrase, but he said that knowledge and ignorance are the twinned roots of wisdom. The more you know, the more you come to realize there's much you don't know. And reflection and wisdom is the process of embracing both those twins and admit that there's more to learn, always more to learn, especially from others who have different expertise, understanding, depth of knowledge, and individual approaches to making meaning and making sense of the situation that we find ourselves in today, that we're going to talk about in the next couple of days. And it's also been said, of course, that the problems of today and tomorrow are seldom solved by yesterday's thinking. And so we really need each other. We need each other, and we need each other's thinking. And that's why this next couple of days are so incredibly important. The impacts of climate change are taking place right now in and around our communities, on our sacred homelands, in our traditional territories, and in rural regions throughout the world. And they all have unique, and to use a scientific term, site-specific challenges. And this is the next few days gives us a great opportunity to strengthen ourselves and strengthen each other and strengthen the bonds between each other, to raise our capacity and our plan for how we're going to adapt to this climate change world and a low carbon future. At Selkirk, of course, we've been, as Terry mentioned, and Lauren mentioned, we're working away on several fronts to reduce our greenhouse gases. We're shooting for net zero as an institution by 2030. We operate with a higher percentage of renewables these days. We have solar panels all over the place, it seems, and more to come. We have a biomass system planned for the Silver King campus, and we just received again last year silver rating with the American Association of Sustainability in Higher Ed. I've signed the Global Climate Letter for colleges and universities on behalf of Selkirk College, and the UN SDG Accord for colleges and universities, which connects us across the globe to other institutions who are passionate about helping communities, students, and our partners to do the good things that we need to do to address climate change. There's always more that we can do to innovate and collaborate. And I love the 4 objectives of today, building today and tomorrow, building and strengthening relationships, learning from each other, and learning from experts, learning from people who bring a lot of wisdom and knowledge to bear, so that we can expand our own worldviews and continue to support those 2 roots of wisdom. My thanks to Columbia Basin RDI and the Planning Institute of BC, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Government of Canada, and I'm going to try and say this all in one phrase, ICA BCCI at SFU. How's that for an acronym? And of course, all the Selkirk College faculty, students, and staff who have helped us organize this event. So our first fantastic panel has 4 great speakers who I'm going to introduce now and then hand off to the first one. But in alphabetical order, we've got Dr. Stuart Cohen, an author and educator on human-caused climate change, who recently retired after 35 years in the work, in the research with the federal government. And he's got many other things in his bio that you can refer to. Ali Giesbrecht, a post-secondary student from the Columbia Basin who is pursuing her bachelor's in science degree in environmental science while working as a communication and education intern at WildSite. And she's at our sister institution at College of the Rockies, a wonderful partner of ours. We have Meredith Hamstead, who's an environmental professional with a long track record of supporting local governments and communities in the Columbia Basin to incorporate climate adaptation and mitigation thinking and considerations into their decision making. And Sangeeta Sudan, the General Manager of Development and Community Sustainability at the Regional District of Central Kootenay, and always a champion at the Regional District for raising the profile of climate change and ensuring local government leads us in this kind of innovation. So they've spent some time preparing for today's plenary, and I think it's going to be wonderful. We'll have time at the end, I think, for questions, but just invite people to, as a thought comes to mind, by all means, put it in the chat. I think Jamie is something we can do, and then Jamie and I will monitor the questions and see if we can get those asked at the end of the session. But let's begin with Sangeeta to kick us off, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Angus, and everybody else for organizing this event. There are not too many people who still dispute climate change is happening. Bridging silos is simplified by that particular fact. Our goal is to reduce GHG emissions, which in turn will reduce our risk from localized extreme weather events, flooding, windstorms, wildfires. Local government and province are at the forefront when these events occur, from response to recovery. Responding to climate change events is costly to government, property owners, and insurers. This is why at the RDCK, we are seeking more investment in reducing risk associated with climate change, bridging climate resilience, and building climate resilient communities. How we achieve this is by working across silos with intention, seeking to collaborate, and where possible, partner to provide equitable and integrated approaches. There are 3 silos that show up in our work on climate action. Silos with other organizations, interdepartmental silos within our own organization, silos based on biases also show up. The first silo is observed with different organizations when different organizations are focused on their own goals of achieving GHG reductions and their own targets. The best way to describe this is by using a swimming pool analogy relayed to me by one of my team. Imagine all the organizations, federal, provincial, local government, nonprofits, utilities, industry, all swimming in a very large and long pool, which at the other end has GHG reductions as the prize. The pool is divided into lanes, and each swimmer is in their own lane waiting for a signal from their respective organization to start swimming. This is not a race because there is plenty of GHG reductions to go around. Instead, it's a marathon, a journey with some starting earlier, some later. It's slow and steady. Endurance and tenacity is needed, and along the way, some need to stop to catch their breath. It's in these moments when slowing down that you notice the swimmer in the next lane has also stopped. You ask, so what are you doing to reduce your GHG emissions? The question leads to others who are in the pool and curious to stop and listen. Eventually, there is a group of swimmers who come to an understanding that in order to get a bigger piece of that prize, GHG reductions, we need to partner. With that intent, planning begins. Funding is acquired, leading to implementation. Some examples of this type of collaborations started with Carbon Neutral Kootenays project and Accelerate Kootenays in this region. With Carbon Neutral Kootenays, 3 regional districts, including municipalities, First Nations, Columbia Basin Trust, and Community Energy Association, a nonprofit, saw an opportunity to shift from business as usual to start measuring GHG emissions in order to achieve carbon neutrality. Accelerate Kootenays is another partnership that also included the 2 big utilities, BC Hydro and Forest BC. This project led to change in market trends by installing EV chargers throughout the Columbia Basin. This made it more attractive for EVs to travel to and within this region, and also created a demand for EVs from our local car dealers and manufacturers. The fact that the US under Biden's administration is moving towards electric fleets makes EVs and battery technology a high demand commodity. The Regional Energy Efficiency Program is another example of a partnership with the utilities to expand the Nelson Hydro EcoSafe program in the region to enable homeowners to receive energy audits of their home and access rebates for retrofits and reduce energy costs. The second silo is interdepartmental in our organization. These silos are created by false barriers such as time. There isn't enough time. These limit how we engage on climate change as an organization. In the RDCK, we have made some strides in this area by being intentional to bridge silos. We have done this through our Senior Energy Specialist, a staff position funded through Forest BC that is seeking to work within the RDCK to advance GHG reductions. This work involves seeking opportunities to help departments reduce their energy costs from operations such as recreation centers, water treatment plants. The Senior Energy Specialist also supports access to training of building officials in the region on the Energy Step Code. Another is our State of Climate Action Report. This report provides opportunity for each department to highlight what they are doing to address climate change, such as our recycling and our organics diversion program. It celebrates these wins and gains everyone's buy-in and is a report card to elected officials and to the public on how the RDCK is doing to reduce risk and build climate resilient communities. And finally, the silo the final silo is one we are making great strides in, despite the fact that we are not subject matter expert. We raise eyebrows and shatter biases on what a regional district is capable of doing. Some examples include completing a recent bioenergy feasibility study where we were examining whether or not full fiber utilization from forestry residue could be potential renewable energy source. Ongoing work is happening right now on watershed governance initiative to protect consumptive water systems for our communities who are reliant on these water sources. We are leaders in the province on wildland urban interface fuel treatment, and our Fire Smart program is now quite mature. This program has several silos, including working with forestry professionals at a large landscape level scale. We have also just completed updating our regional flood mapping to replace old information provided by the province to local governments in 2004 when we became responsible for flood management. In conclusion, bridging silos is the context of local governments in the context of local governments, and is a matter of confronting your thinking and replacing it with being more inclusive of other ideas and adaptable. In this way, silos are similar to biases. If unchecked, can affect innovation, collaboration, and partnerships. However, along our journey is to address climate change. It will require leadership, networking, building relationships and partnerships that say we can go far together rather than I can go fast alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta, and some wonderful thoughts right at the end, confronting our thinking, including other ideas and networking. So wonderful. We will continue on now to Dr. Stuart Cohen and hear some of his thoughts.
Well, thank you so much, Angus. And I am logging in today from Richmond, BC, the unceded lands of Coast Salish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. As Angus mentioned, I've recently retired from a lengthy climate change research career with Environment and Climate Change Canada. I started that career in 1984. And in those days, I would get pretty excited about seeing a small story on climate change on page 17 of the local newspaper. You know, something that would indicate that the public was beginning to pay attention to this. Today, of course, it's quite different. We see and hear climate change stories on a regular basis, not just in newspapers, but radio, television, and a wide range of social media platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, websites, TED Talks, YouTube, podcasts, and blogs. I happen to have a blog. If you check my bio, you'll see the address for that. It's drclimatechange.com. And I've been blogging for the last couple of years. And I've wanted to do that because I've wanted to contribute to this growth in public awareness about climate change. I think that there is a lot more public awareness about it, and not just about climate science, not just about changes in temperature, changes in rainfall, but all of it. The potential impacts of future climate change, the adaptation challenges and opportunities, and also the issues with greenhouse gas emission reduction that Sangeeta just spoke about. But this has also brought with it the realization that the climate change challenge is not just one of natural science. It's not just about physics and biology. It's very much an interdisciplinary and also an intercultural research and communication challenge, which makes it an opportunity for shared learning between those from research communities and those with local, practical, experiential knowledge. So how do we get our substantive information about climate change? And how do we know what to do with this information once we get it? And how can we use it in our current work and in planning for the future? There is what I like to call a climate change information supply chain. It's something that already exists. It brings climate change information from information sources to information users. Now, probably the most visible part of this information supply chain is the climate service. Fortunately, in British Columbia, we have one. It's called the Pacific Climate Impacts Consortium, or PCIC. It's located at the University of Victoria. It's supported by the provincial and federal governments. And the federal government also has a national scale climate service. It's called the Canadian Centre for Climate Services, the CCCS. It's based in Ottawa. Now, climate services may be the most visible part of this information supply chain, but the point I want to make is that the entirety of this supply chain is not just about climate data sets. It's not just about temperature and rainfall. A climate service itself should not just be considered as some kind of loading dock where some manufacturing plant takes out boxes of product, puts it on the dock, the trucks show up, put it in the truck, and they drive away. No, climate service should not just be a loading dock. And I would argue the information supply chain should not be seen as a loading dock either. Why? Because what the supply chain needs to be able to do is to enable the translation of climate projections into projections of future risk. Risk is something I think we all understand. And if we can treat managing climate change as a risk management problem, then it gives us an opportunity to apply the tools that we already have to this. And not only can we do risk assessment, but we can also use climate change information to enable some kind of assessment of the effectiveness of climate change adaptation strategies, using our tools on our desktop to assess adaptation alternatives under future scenarios before we actually have to build them. But in order for this information supply chain to be effective, it needs to serve as a bridge between the climate research community that generates the projections, generates the future temperatures and the rainfall numbers, and the decision makers that are mandated to plan for the future of their communities and the businesses. So in this information supply chain, to build this bridge between those producing the climate information, like at Climate Services, and those that need to use it, I think there's a very important role for practitioners to serve as a bridge between those two communities, the research community and the decision-making community, to establish a dialogue on how to plan differently, not only on the basis of past climate experiences and statistics, but on the basis of future climate conditions that may be beyond local experience. These are the two silos that I think the practitioner can be an important bridge to connect. Now, who are the kinds of people that are using this kind of information? Well, it could be an engineer advising on adapting a community water system to future changes in extreme rainfall. It could be a forester planning for future pest and wildfire risk. It could be a planner reassessing community development given changing future risks of flood in particular locations. Sangeeta just mentioned updating of flood maps, for example. It could also be a regulator mandated with updating codes and standards for buildings. It could be bank or insurance company assessing financial opportunities and risks for development in a particular location. I feel that practitioners can help to bridge the silos between the climate science community and decision makers, enabling more effective action on adapting to future climate change, but also, very importantly, enabling this climate change information supply chain to be both effective and sustainable for all users over the long term. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart. And one of the things about being a moderator is you can't take notes. You got to sort of listen as well. And just some wonderful points about bridging the divide between the experts and those who need to make the decisions and run the scenarios and come up with some of the options, but also the translation. And so really appreciate those comments. Our next speaker is Meredith. So Meredith, I'll let you take over.
Hi, thank you very much, Angus, and thank you, Stuart and Sangeeta. It's a pleasure to be able to speak after you. I got good ideas from you. And Kisukukit to all of you who are out there. I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Tunaha here in Invermere. Many of you, some of you know me over the past 20 years as an independent consultant working in community-based sustainability and climate resilience, but I'm here a bit of a surprise to myself from the perspective of a business person in the residential construction sector in British Columbia. Over the past 2 years, my focus has shifted and possibly narrowed to be really consumed with the construction and the retrofitting of high performance, energy efficient, climate resilient homes that are also attainable at mid-market pricing. My husband and business partner, Paul Denchuk, and I own and operate a small construction company called Think Bright Homes. Oh, now I've done it. Oh, I have 2 slides. Oh, this is mortifying. Okay, I hope you can see my Think Bright Home slide. So this shift has, from consulting to construction, has forced me to entirely rethink how climate resilience is being achieved out there in the real world beyond the edge of my desk. From this perspective, climate action has come to be a very different thing than I had previously considered it to be. Most pressing within the context of this conference is that I've had to acknowledge that I have historically approached climate action from the perch of my self-styled white-collar silo. And over the past couple of years, this has been at worst humiliating sometimes, and at very best, quite humbling. But it's allowed me to understand, I think, that climate action and low carbon resilience are really no longer principally technical or regulatory challenges. They are in fact socio-political challenges that are going to require new ways of making decisions and relating to one another across outdated silos. So within our own company, in order to deliver on the lofty but very tangible energy and climate resilience targets that we have for housing, we've had to adopt modes of decision-making that prioritize and reward knowledge sharing and practical collaboration. We really only know we're getting that right when it's making everybody at least a little bit uncomfortable. But the result is that the combined capacity of all of the people involved in this process to dream and implement climate resilient housing is greater than the sum of the parts. So while this may sound very cerebral, the practical application of these ideas is being tested now in real time across British Columbia through the implementation of the BC Energy Step Code. If, as we're required now by regulation, by 2032, every new home in British Columbia is going to meet Step 5 net zero ready standards, this actually means honoring and really listening to and learning from every single individual included in the construction and renovation of a home. So engineers, modelers, and building officials are certainly critical partners in that information supply chain that Stuart spoke of, but so are the plumbers, the truckers, the masons, the electricians, and the HVAC installers. Each of these individual human beings has the capacity to either advance or hold up the achievement of climate resilient housing. They have knowledge that we need. They are not only recipients of information from the supply chain. So what does this look like in practical terms? Well, if the electrician, for example, is not fully engaged, our targets for our business and provincially for high performance housing can be annihilated in under a minute. Just telling that individual how very important the energy efficiency targets are for this home or for that client is not enough. They actually need to be a respected, engaged participant in the process. They need to be understood as critical actors in that climate change information supply chain. This is quite a lot harder than it sounds, not because the electrician doesn't get it, but because it means that I have had to accept as a climate action practitioner that the hardest silos to dismantle are the ones that I've built for myself. I think that the path to a climate resilient future is challenging us to acknowledge that we've each worked actually very hard to build our silos because they protect us, they elevate us. It's how we gained our skills, our knowledge, our credibility in our fields. So tearing down and dismantling those silos, replacing them with more lateral relationships can cause a sense of loss, maybe loss of power, a sense of disorder, especially for ourselves, but also for those around us. It's going to take courage and humility for those of us in the white collar silo, which I think is probably most of us in attendance here, to treat all people as having something equally essential and inherently valuable to contribute to the achievement of climate resilience. So for me, the return on investment of kind of stepping uncomfortably out of my white collar silo has been the joy of developing a genuinely problem-solving relationship with the people who work every day with their hands to manifest the homes that we in the office have been dreaming of and modeling on paper. These people solve problems in real time. They bear tangible responsibility for physical outcomes, and they know things that we in the office know nothing about. We need them to do their jobs well, or we will not make it to climate resilient housing. For our crews and subtrades, their return on investment for being brave enough to take on more responsibility, to enter that information supply chain, to take on more leadership, is that they really are becoming the hands-on experts in building science and energy efficiency. They're building for themselves higher job satisfaction, higher job security, because they've been brave enough to step out of their blue-collar silos. So I want to add one additional thought about silos that are making a difference on our path together towards climate resilience. And these are the silos of the optimists and the pessimists. So we'll always need the pessimists to point out the problems. But for me, jumping ship from the pessimist silo, where I was for many years, to the optimist silo has made each day a better, more productive day for me, but also for the people around me. I once asked my colleague, Dr. Hans Schreier, why, despite all of the terrible knowledge he has about the state of water resilience in a changing climate, why is he such a happy person? And his response really changed my career path. He told me, I learned years ago that some people are focused on problems and some are focused on solutions. I choose to spend my energies with the optimists. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Meredith. Some of the pessimists I talk to prefer to refer to themselves as realists. so there's always a discussion. Well, you know, realism. So, but thanks so much for those thoughts. And some things I wrote down were just the courage and humility that's required to include others in the decision-making process, and the real difference between, or the intense relationship that has to occur between those who develop the ideas, and to build from Stuart's model of a supply chain of knowledge and translation to planning, and then to our real reliance on people on the ground to actually execute and to feel included in the overall work. So thank you for those comments. We're now going to hear from Ali, and Ali's a student, and give us some perspectives on her generation's thoughts.
Thanks. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen quickly because I have a few pictures that I think will go really well at this. Okay, so I am coming to you today from Cranbrook, BC. I am, like Angus said, I'm currently attending the college, and my program in environmental science is also through the University of Lethbridge. And another important part of what I'm going to be talking about today is, is my internship with WildSite and my attending of the Columbia River Field School program. So, well, first I'll talk about through high school how climate change adaptation was kind of come at. We were mostly talking about facts and like what has happened and looking at statistics. This is also very similar to what we talked about in the college. We would look at pictures of glaciers, for example, and how much they've been receding. We didn't really talk very much about how we're going to be having to adapt, especially in a smaller town like Cranbrook. And yeah, we didn't really talk about much about adaptation, which I think is really interesting. I don't really know why we would have not talked about it much, but I think it is still really important. And so with WildSite, I'm going to switch to a different picture quickly. This picture is me and the education director of WildSite, Monica Neeson. We are out at the Columbia wetlands, and I think a really important part of Columbia River Field School was getting out and really strengthening our connections to the environment. And it showed me a lot about my local watershed, the geography, and we also got to hear a lot about the Indigenous perspectives. And another thing that was also really important about WildSite's program was I learned that I have a voice in my future, and that I can still be informed when it comes to the political and economical things, which is like the Columbia River Treaty, which is very closely related to the Columbia River. And yeah, it helped me see the importance of my generation and how the other youth and me can join together and really live up to what our future, or what our role is going to be in the future. And we also learned that people like Monica and other people, other leaders in the Columbia River Field School, and even some of the other people that we talked to, like we went to Selkirk College and we did like a mini conference there. People do want to hear youth opinions, which I wasn't sure about that before. And I think some other youth are also like sometimes feel like they're not heard or that they don't really have a voice. But yeah, Columbia Field School was a great way to experience that and made me want to protect my environment even more. And for my last picture, I will share, this one is not of the Columbia Field School, but I thought it would be really cool just to share this one with you guys. It's a picture of a hiking trip I did in Mount Assiniboine with my friend. And I thought that having all the posts with all the different directions really shows like the diversion. But even for this conference, we need to all be talking about coming together and working through these problems as a group, like Meredith said. So I think a silo, also like Meredith said, that I've built for myself a little bit is that I feel intimidated in this field because lots of people know lots of scientific facts and statistics, but I am more of like a philosophical and like passionate youth. I'm working towards knowing more about the facts, but as I get further in my educational path, I will know more about that. But I think that sometimes we, like adults, think that the students or young adults don't care about climate change, but we really do. I know lots of passionate youth in Cranbrook and in the local area that really do care about the environment. So I think that's a little bit of the silos that I build for myself. Another one could be the difficulty in directly influencing change, which is just going to be youth coming to conferences like this, getting involved in meetings. And so it's partially us, we need to be joining these, but we also need to be given the opportunities like this one for me to join this paddle, which I'm very grateful of. And like another silos that I may have also created for myself, but in talking to a few of my other friends, I have learned this is that sometimes we feel defeated or not, like we maybe don't know what to do, or that we do not have the authority, which is another really important thing, is that adults or older generations have the ability to maybe more directly influence or have more authority. So I think that, so hopefully I can be inspiring everyone a little bit today to be making sure that they're really doing the most that they can and providing good examples for what our future generation, what our roles are going to be filling, and use your power and authority of direct action and influence. And if we as youth and the younger generation see you doing that, we will follow you and we'll be able to learn from you of what to do or what not to do. And I use the Columbia River Treaty as a good example of this. Like in the past, the beginning of the treaty was not set up how it probably should have been, but now with the renegotiations, people have really been working towards like making sure all different stakeholders are included, which I think is something that youth could definitely learn from, and we will learn from that in the future when we have to be making the decisions that you guys have to make. Yeah, I think I'm going to pass it back to Angus, right? I think that is correct.
That's right. And I've just put Assiniboine on my list for next summer based on that lovely picture, if we can, if we're allowed. So thank you so much, Ali. And every time we hear from youth and we hear about the need for youth to feel safe and not intimidated and included to bring their voice forward, I think that helps us and helps youth to remain optimistic and hopeful and engaged and confident to help the decisions to be made in the right way. And so I really appreciate those comments, because I think sometimes youth are often forgotten, and it's really the future we're trying to address all together. So a great example of inclusion and bridging silos, and not just looking at your own personal ones, but a call to action for the rest of us. So we have some time, I think, for a kind of a moderated discussion. And I think there have been some questions and comments coming in on the chat, but maybe what I will do is throw it open with a couple of questions for each of the panelists. And you covered some of this in your various talks and perspectives, but one of the things that would be great to hear is some of those ideal qualities or characteristics of good silo busters. And we heard a little bit of that from Meredith and Ali. And, you know, are those around in rural and remote communities, or can we, who are those folks with those characteristics that we can start to bring in?
I might just jump in and say that I think that courage to me seems to be the characteristic that is most required to either break out of your own silos or reach into someone else's or defer to someone else's silo. I think that, as I said in my presentation and others spoke of, we know what work needs to be done. We just don't know how to do it. And so the task is really to begin, be prepared to fail. And I think that that's the mark of courage. And there's lots of it in our region.
I would pick up on that where Meredith left off. I think also humility is important, especially when the silo is solid. You need to kind of bust it open, and humility, but also tenacity. I mentioned that in my talk. It's really important. Don't give up, because eventually facts change minds.
I think, well, for me, it's a little bit of a different experience because I come from a research experience rather than a planning experience. But creating interdisciplinary teams that were willing to kind of be together to work on a common location with a common set of futures, and then bring their own tools and perspectives into it. I thought that kind of networking moment was fabulous, and my hope was that the legacy of those experiences would, that each of these people would bring it back to where they came from. So I know a number of years ago when the Columbia Basin Trust did their program called Communities Adapting to Climate Change Initiative, CACI. That was a great opportunity for people from different backgrounds to become engaged as a team in a common pursuit, which was to enable planning to occur in small communities. That's how I met Ingrid. She was one of the planners that got recruited into this, and I was kind of on the outside as one of these friendly advisors helping facilitate these processes along. But this was something the Columbia Basin Trust facilitated and enabled because they saw the value of creating teams and the legacy. It's a human legacy as a result of that people bring them into their own networks. So I think that's a great silo buster too, it could be events like this one that we're having today, but taking a moment to create a team and bring people together to solve a common question, and hopefully they'll bring it back with them to the networks that they belong to, and they can circulate it through that way. So I think we should always take advantage of moments like this, because I think they have a very great human legacy for shared learning.
Yeah, and just to branch off of what Stuart said, I think like creating the legacy is really important. Like I said when I was speaking, like for youth to see, because then we see like, oh, that really worked well, like making sure that we really are coordinating our plans. And yeah, it's cool to hear about the Columbia Basin Trust program. Maybe I should like get on it more and be more involved. Like I know I'm saying that adults need to be more involved and making sure that people are doing lots. Yeah, like Sangeeta said, sometimes the silos are really solid, and like just everyone working together. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you get a little bit inching farther and farther into cracking the problem.
Angus, like, just one more thing I want to know. So whether in the sort of the consulting local government community space, or in the space I'm in now, which is in residential construction, really my experience has been that you cannot help bridge silos if you invest some money in bringing people together. And so in residential construction, that looks like an integrated design process, which really is what we did at CACI that Stuart's talking to. We bring together the energy modeler, the architect, the HVAC installer, the client is in the conversation. That's uncomfortable sometimes. We collaboratively set targets, we identify problems, and what could take days and days and days and sometimes months over the course of a single home building project to sort out, we kind of sort out in a couple hours. Everybody's on the same page. Now everybody can go off back into their silos and do what they're really, really good at. But we come out together and we have to spend money on it. And people say, well, is it worth $2,000 to get all those people together? It never fails. Spend the money to convene people and then get to work.
It's amazing how cost-effective collaboration can be. Sorry, Sangeeta, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to a couple of questions in the chat. One was related to, what do you do to, I think Jesse asked that, how do you break some of the solid silos, for lack of a better phrase? And to be honest with you, I'll tell you what my approach is. I don't even attempt it. I just continue talking to those that are listening and that are moving things forward. The ones that are still in that illusion that climate change is not happening or that any action taken is just futile, that's their opinion. So I leave that with them. The other question was around Indigenous, including Indigenous communities in climate action. And that is something I think we are starting to do at the regional district. And working with the Yakanuki, Laura Kootenai Band down in Creston as one example. And so yes, you're right, more needs to happen there as well.
And it's a great point too raised by Shanna, because the as Stuart was saying, there's this body of knowledge that needs to be a legacy, but it also needs to be inclusive and sort of foundational to the discussion and the collaboration that needs to occur. And so this entire body of knowledge that's not being tapped into around traditional knowledge and connection to the land is, I totally agree, is really important. Interesting little list that emerged though in the discussion before I get to Stuart is courage to try and make mistakes, some humility to listen instead of talk, and be prepared to learn, tenacity, creating interdisciplinary teams. That's all about bridging silos, and then creating that foundational knowledge and legacy of knowledge for future practitioners also to refer to. And of course, the other thing we heard just now was committing to the investment in relationship, the investment into collaborative problem solving, and that it does cost money, but it's, as Meredith points out, often a way to save either heartache, failure, or further costs down the road. So Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on, I think, one of the issues associated with actually our successes in creating these learning moments is that they're moments. They're based on opportunism. How do we get beyond that so that it's become something that is actually the business as usual of professions, of trades, of learning institutions? How do we get this to be part of the professional development that practitioners and professionals engage in? Engineers, accountants, foresters, all of this, to be able to integrate climate change within professional development of all these fields, so that this becomes something that is the new business as usual, the new normal. Climate change now becomes integrated within professions, within learning. It's not simply on the corner of your desk that you take out because there's some project here that we can bring people together for 6 months or a year, and then the project's over. You can't keep teams together for very long, but if you make this part of the regular business, the regular learning, the regular professional development, I think that creates the seeds for future collaboration that becomes a lot easier, that becomes a lot more organic. And I think we will need that just to elevate our human capacity to deal with all the issues associated with climate change, vulnerability, risk, and adaptation that will come.
Great point, Meredith.
I think there's a desire in climate change, as there is in most change-oriented sectors, professions, areas of inquiry, to have the change, make the change. Let's do business differently. But we all know it doesn't work that way. So one of the things I've enjoyed about shifting into the construction sector is that things are clearer. They're, you know, clearer parameters. We're working on this house, or we're working on this project. The first time we ran an integrated design process, it was a pain in the butt. Nobody wanted to do it. It was far more expensive than it needed to be. Everybody was super uncomfortable. Nobody knew what to do afterwards. And now we're on to our third or fourth or fifth, or however, I don't know, however many IDPs we do. And people expect it from Think Bright Home. So we're gonna have to do this at the beginning. Doesn't take very long, don't worry about it. And you know, we're still learning to do this, but it's evolving, and it's evolving out of a whole bunch of practice that has come over 20 years from behind. So I think that with courage, there's a requirement to have patience, which we're not that good at in the climate change sector because things are so urgent. But by practicing a bit of patience and understanding that we're developing a practice, then we can say to people really honestly, this might totally suck. I don't know how this is going to go, but let's just try it, and we'll do it differently next time.
Mm-hmm. And here's a comment similar to that from Jim, who says, you know, optimists who've converted from pessimism are just people just decided to just do it. And so I just didn't want to lose a great question here from Santiago, who said earlier, or asked earlier, would love to know about technologies that can help us build, help us with supply chain management. Could decentralization be the answer? So are there any additional tools or technical tools that people have used to help with the sort of dispersion, as Ali said earlier, with the thoughts and decision making? I hope that captures it, Santiago.
I think we're doing it right now.
Yeah, we're using technology, to come together. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
actually, it's interesting. There's a bit of a tension here between a particular actor that has control over a particular piece of the information supply chain. Santiago may be talking about bigger supply chains. I was just referring to how does climate change information get from the climate science world through the practitioner world to the decision makers, like where Sangeeta is. How many people do you want at one end actually providing climate change data sets? If you're in BC, you're always going to PKIC. Do you really want to go someplace else? That's a question. I'm not sure I have an answer to that, but obviously for various pieces on the supply chain, you want assurance that there's quality control. And what PKIC has as a climate data provider is established quality control. So there may be certain circumstances where a particular piece of that chain does need to be kind of centralized to ensure quality control, but then there may be other circumstances where there could be a whole lot of different information providers based on different experiences. I'm sure Meredith can speak to that with all the contractors that feed into her home building process. So it's different between one step and another step. So I don't think there's a one size fits all here, but there may be decentralization in certain circumstances, but in others where you're concerned about quality control of a piece of information, you want to be sure you know where you're getting it from.
That's great. And your earlier comments too about our climate literacy and our professional development becoming more mainstream. And one of the things we're looking at the college here is a common learning outcome for every student. That would develop a consistent level of climate literacy, regardless of your program, because it's, again, another silo is discipline, as you say, or professional pursuits. I just had a quick question for Ali, and I'll jump off the chat for a moment, but just, Ali, you gave some examples of how youth could be more engaged in the conversation, and also as an opportunity to share their hopes and ideas. Are there any other things that that you would see being able to, again, help youth to build that confidence so that they don't need to be an expert. They need to bring their concerns and ideas and feel safe to do so.
I think just like making sure that you extend invites to people, which will, like, I'm very, very honored to be on this panel, but like making sure like that people are aware and of things that are happening, like community meetings or just conferences that are happening, just so like, because all you have to do is go to one and then you're like, oh, like everyone was really nice, everyone wants to be there, and then you like will keep attending. That's kind of how I feel. Like after Columbia River Field School, I attended like a few other conferences, like one in Kimberley, Transboundary, like One River Ethics Matter. I think I was at that one, and that like really broke the ice for me. I was like, okay, like people are wanting me to be here. Like people really value, like so many people were coming up and talking to me. So I think like just making sure that the invite is extended, and yeah, like making sure that people feel welcome, because yeah, it is a little bit intimidating. Like I don't feel as intimidated anymore because I'm not really like expected to know lots of facts or anything, which is good. Like I'm learning about it and I find it really interesting, obviously, but yeah, it's good to just be able to inspire people.
Well, and 15 minutes with an inspiring and hopeful youth should inspire us all. So I really appreciate that. I have a question here about and a comment about codes and standards and policy changes. You know, we had an example of the building code and how that's just sort of a kind of a get it done. There are other examples from the panelists of where we're starting to see those silos already beginning to be addressed in other parts of rural community life. So there's the building code, but some of the other examples that Sangeeta provided, are we seeing that in other parts of the region?
If I may speak, so I think what you're asking, is there any silos out there? Well, there are some silos out there with regards to changes in building code. Some of them exist even in the thinking of some of our board members, because there's a belief that the cost of building is going to increase for people out there. And, you know, so it's been a journey for us to get our board to accept step 1 of the step code, and we're moving in that direction. The other piece, I think there's a big gap. We're hoping to receive funding and work in partnership with a bunch of people, like we like to do, to address one of the issues that just came to mind. Is apparently in order for a contractor who is selling a air source heat pump, and maybe Meredith can speak to this a bit more, they need to be registered but in order to access rebates for some of this equipment. So one of the things I'm noticing in the rural areas is there's lack of people to provide certain services. And so how we're picking that up at local government and through nonprofits and working in collaboration with the other regional districts is accessing grants to find the experts to help us work towards bringing everybody up to speed, the trades, the builders, the contractors. But Meredith probably knows more.
I think BC Housing, I'll generalize a little bit, Sangeeta. You hit on a really sort of touchy issue in the implementation of the STEP code, is that HVAC, heating, ventilation, and cooling, is a mess all across the country. So how now we're building super airtight houses. There are human health and safety issues associated with the mess in HVAC. BC Housing, the province of British Columbia, are building an exceptional case study in how to roll out a really, really profound, complex regulatory change. They are delivering a huge amount of training. They run a program called Train the Trainer, where they provide slides. They, you know, when we were all allowed to get together in person, I was flown out to the Lower Mainland 4 times to go and participate in training with BCIT, so that our company could be enabled to work from the bottom up while the regulatory stuff is working from the top down and enabling me to work laterally with the building inspectors and the electricians. So there's been this real study in, we could not see the changes that are happening in the housing sector towards net zero by 2032 without the regulation. The regulation is essential, but it's a necessary but not sufficient condition. If you're not working with everybody who's affected by that regulation change, you're not going to make it. It's just going to be a gong show. So engaging with, the community energy managers, organizations like CEA, and maybe the optimistic builders around the province, and enabling those people to go out and tell good stories is going to make the regulation work, whether or not you have boards that are like, ooh, I don't know if we really want to do this. I would say they need to get in the game, because this is happening and it's really exciting and it's really positive. Maybe I'll just stop there.
And there's some great comments too coming in as well about sort of other examples where Elise says that there are many initiatives at the national level to incorporate climate change into policy for rural local governments. A few examples there. And then during CACCI, a model subdivision servicing bylaw was developed. And then right now, the BC Ministry of Health is updating the drinking water design guidelines. Yeah, I was aware of that too. And the city of Rosslyn is applying a climate lens to the update of the OCP. So yeah, so people are getting on with things at the policy level, but also the practice level. And then Stacy says that Fortis requires licensed contractors in order to access renovation rebates. However, many homeowners are capable of renovations themselves. And that has frustrated many homeowners in Rosslyn, and I'm sure in other communities too. I've got one question for the group. We're coming to the end of the session, but one last question before giving an opportunity for each of the panelists sort of for a 1-minute wrap. I think that's how they do it on the debaters. You get one last chance. There's the pure research and the applied research that Stuart's done in his career, and then the sort of the execution and the work that each of the rest of the panelists do to keep that supply chain going. But one of the things we hear a lot from our students is how to gain that early experience that Ali has talked about. And so a lot of that is kind of community-based project work, community-based applied research. What are some initial thoughts that come to mind to the panelists around what things we could be doing in our communities to get more knowledge gaining at the ground level, or some trying different things and researching them and sharing them? Any specific topics?
I think that a good community-based project, or I don't know if you would really call it a project, but just making sure, I felt like in high school, there was not much exposure. We would talk about it, but it was kind of more of oh, there's nothing we can do to stop it, which we're not really trying to stop it. That's what the whole thing is about, is we're just trying to adapt and see how we need to change. But I think somehow including it more maybe in curriculum, or just in certain classes. I also kind of what you said, Angus, about how at the college you're making a learning outcome all similar for all the programs, no matter which program you're in, even if it's not environmental science or something like that. I think that would be really cool to do that, even at the College of the Rockies too, where I am.
Okay, I've got a question here from Jamie. Have we addressed Jesse and Sarah's question? Sorry, I'm going to have to scroll up. Great question. How do we have discussions in a non-confrontational way? Wow, that's a big one to start to wind down on. And then Jesse said, yeah, exactly. Confrontation leads to shut down. We need to open people up to the radically urgent reality of climate change. So yeah, any stories from the road of there is a silo of confrontation. That's a relationship silo. Any thoughts on that?
Angus, would it be okay if I speak to Ali's comments briefly?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I think that so curriculum is a huge thing. My daughter is in grade 9, and she's just starting to learn about the difference between climate and weather, which just makes me cringe. You know, really, this is very basic. How do we get to climate literacy if a 14-year-old, my 14-year-old, is not clear on the difference between climate and weather in a really intuitive way? But I think that we just hired a young guy who's going to work as a laborer on our crew this summer. He's 16 years old. It's a summer job. What I said to him when I hired him is, we're actually not hiring you as a laborer. We're hiring you as a climate activist. You know, this is what you're doing, because climate action is seen as a whole bunch of things, but there's a whole bunch of stuff between those things that has to happen anyway. And some of that is like digging a hole, or, you know, making sure the insulation is put in okay. Until we start valuing the things they're doing in between the climate stuff, like the blower door test, or you know, the public consultation, the things in between have to be seen as opportunities to both bring climate action, have youth bring climate action to the table because it's the mindset, but also understand that climate action is as unglamorous as most of everything else that we do, and start to redefine what gaining experience in climate action and climate science really looks like. It's every day. I think that's where the power comes from you, Ali, and people who are like-minded in your age group, is you're just going to bring that perspective. You're going to bring it.
And it sounds like there's a conversation tomorrow afternoon on effective climate conversations, which is great. I also had a question, one last one too. I think I've got the time. Just, you know, an observation that perhaps even this conference could be considered a silo. You know, of all of us who are engaged and excited about the topic, and wondering how many of the sort of the blue collar workers are participating, and we have no way of possibly knowing, but it might be good over the next couple of days if some of those folks, if you're out there in the group, to come forward with a question or a thought or a comment about how this looks for you on the ground, as it were. And then a great example too, I hope everyone was able to read it, about what they're doing in Central Saanich on Vancouver Island around the OCP process, which sounds awesome. So we have to, I think, move to our 1-minute summaries, Jamie, if that's okay. So we've got a chance for each of the speakers to just take a minute and summarize some of their thoughts and impressions from this morning, and then we'll close the session off. So why don't we go in reverse order? Can we do that? Is that going to mess everything up? Ali, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can start. That's okay. I just first wanted to say I'm very grateful to be here. Like, thanks to Ingrid for inviting me. And yeah, I really am looking forward to the next few days learning from everybody and speaking my perspective when I can. And thanks to everyone for joining. And yeah, hopefully you will think about when you're in your events to make sure that you include your youth, because we want to be there, even though you might think that, oh, teenagers, they don't want to be a part of this, like they don't care. We definitely do. We just might need a little shove sometimes, and open invitation and lots of support. But yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Ali. Meredith?
Thank you very much. It was wonderful to have the opportunity to listen to these different perspectives. I think the thing that's really going to stick for me as the thread through all of these was, Angus, what you talked about, knowledge and ignorance being sort of the opposite sides of the same coin. And I think I'm just going to put this out there, that I think that as climate change practitioners, we often, whether knowingly or unknowingly, consider ourselves to be knowledge holders who need to share information out more effectively. How do we communicate more effectively? But that if we flip that coin around and accept our own ignorance and learn to listen better, more diversely, that we can create, you know, like one of those lazy rivers at the pool where the information just really, really spins around. It's not coming from any one place. It's being shared collaboratively. And so I think I just, maybe it sounds a bit preachy, I don't know, but accepting our own ignorance as a legitimate barrier to achieving climate resilience, low carbon climate resilience, might be something worth trying as a long-term experiment with ourselves.
Thanks so much. That's awesome. That's Stuart.
Thanks, Angus. And yeah, I also would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity for me to be here, to be part of this fantastic panel. And I look forward to the next 2 days of this conference. I want to take this moment to shamelessly plug my blog. It's www.drclimatechange.com. Spell out the word doctor. And I'm doing it because actually consistent with the theme of this conference, I've been quite anxious to approach a wide range of climate change topics with a boundary crossing lens, whether it's adaptation, mitigation, policy issues, learning issues. The idea, for example, of what is a climate service, what is a climate school, you'll see all those kinds of topics on there. I think we need to keep finding ways to do this. I think Selkirk College is in a good position to be that kind of forum and platform for boundary crossing learning on all aspects of climate change. And I think we, again, need to make this beyond opportunistic. We need to make this part of the new normal for learning and for bringing people together, again, to create the human legacy that we need to address these issues as we go forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I've written down that term, boundary crossing lens. I'm going to use that. Is that okay if I use that in the future? It's a great visual for me. Sangeeta.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for hosting this event. From, I guess, the local government perspective, climate action really touches on many things. It touches on, you know, food systems and food security. It touches on, you know, protecting our water, protecting our land. But ultimately, it's about, and are the critters that live on it. But ultimately, it's about community sustainability and ensuring that we are building resilient and long-term sustainable communities in our region. We live in a very dynamic region. Province is dynamic in itself from a geological perspective. And in thinking of that, one of the approaches that I really admire is the one that Saanich has taken, Central Saanich, in their planning processes. I mean, they're really focused on ecosystem-based planning, which I think is important to consider when you think about where we live and the dynamics of our geological history and some recent geological events. So I think climate action is very broad, and for local government, we are ultimately reacting to what our constituency wants out there as far as you know, protection of some values that they consider important, such as food or land or water, whatever that may be. And so yeah, I think we need to think of it in broad terms. And I want to say I'm really grateful to have Ali here. It's nice to see youth represented. It makes me think about how we could do that more at the regional district. And I want to thank you, Ali, for raising that awareness in me today.
Thank you so much. And we hear a lot, don't we, about systems thinking, and there's a great point that you raise around ecosystems thinking and planning together. And so another thing that I've written down. Well, I think I have to just close things off before handing it back, but thanks so much for putting up with me. One of the things said in one of the earlier comments, I think by Jesse, is about, you know, turning this from the idea of climate change being a radical idea to actually helping people to understand the radical urgency of the need for these conversations that we had just this morning. And so Absolutely great point, because we're there. We have to start having these really tough silo busting conversations, and really do need to learn with humility from each other and apply that learning on in our day-to-day lives. So I really appreciate everybody's questions, and the panelists, awesome panelists. It's an honor for me. I actually got through the whole thing without starting to talk on mute, which is a new one for me. I really appreciate everybody's patience, and but for all 102 who are on the session, really thank you for coming and joining us this morning and for the next couple of days. So I'll hand it back to Jamie, Lauren, and or Ingrid. I'm not sure who, but carry on. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Angus, Meredith, Sangeeta, Ali, and Stuart. What a perfect way to open this event, as I'm hearing the comments about the different silos and the best way to bridge the silos. This event just really feels to me like an excellent first step. And I also heard an invitation with all the comments. And so I hope all of those watching can take this invitation with you over the next day and a half. And that is, if you're not uncomfortable, we're not getting it right. I think that came from you, Meredith. So it's okay to be uncomfortable. That's how we're gonna push our boundaries and be able to hear those different perspectives. So I invite each of you into that brave space of being a little uncomfortable through some of the conversations. That's good. That's how we will get the solution-driven, optimistic perspectives that are being called on. And it's okay to fail. And I'll end with it's what Sangeeta started us off with, which is it's better to go far together than fast alone. So that's the invitation, and I'm really excited for each of you for being here.